I still have a job, I just don't have a place to sleep. The voice comes from the front seat of a car that hasn't moved in hours. The windows are fogged from breath. Clothes hang from the back seat like a closet that no longer exists. Outside, the low hum of a highway blends with the distant clatter of a shopping cart rolling across cracked pavement. It smells like gasoline, damp fabric, and something quietly breaking. Welcome to US Homeless Stories. Tonight, we open the door to an America most people will never dare to look at. Not the sidewalks, not the tents, but the invisible spaces. Cars parked in silence. Storage units where people whisper so they won't be heard. Motels paid week by week, where the line between shelter and eviction resets every 7 days. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development reported in its 2024 point-in-time count that over 650,000 people are experiencing homelessness on any given night. But outreach workers will tell you that number doesn't see everything. It doesn't count the ones behind tinted glass. It doesn't count the ones who still show up to work every morning. But behind every number is a face, a history, a name the data never bother to record. Stay with this story until the end, because what you're about to see is not just hardship, it's a mirror held up to all of us. The line between stability and the street is thinner than most people imagine. A lost job, a broken relationship, a medical bill too high to pay. Sometimes that's all it takes. Have you ever parked somewhere at night and wondered who else is sleeping nearby, unseen? If this story moves you, subscribe to US Homeless Stories so we can keep giving voice to those who deserve to be heard. Because the crisis you can't see is the one growing fastest. And what's driving people into these hidden spaces, what's pushing them out of homes and into survival mode, begins with something far more complex than housing. Inside a parked car, the human body changes. Sleep becomes shallow, interrupted. The spine curves against seats not designed for rest. The immune system weakens slowly, almost invisibly, under constant stress. Cortisol levels remain elevated, a biological alarm bell that never turns off. Over time, it wears the body down. Outreach nurses describe infections that begin as minor cuts but linger for weeks, urinary tract infections that go untreated, respiratory illnesses from breathing recycled air in confined spaces. And then there's something quieter, something harder to measure, the slow erosion of stability. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition 2025 report, a full-time worker earning minimum wage cannot afford a two-bedroom apartment anywhere in the United States, not one county. But behind every number is a face, a history, a name the data never bothered to record. People don't always fall into homelessness through a single moment. Sometimes it's a slide, rent increases, hours cut, savings drained. Then the car becomes temporary, then permanent. Paramedics describe responding to overdoses not just in alleyways but in vehicles, behind grocery stores, in parking lots. Fentanyl is still present, quiet, odorless. A synthetic opioid that slows breathing until the body forgets how to continue. Naloxone can reverse it, but only if someone is there. In a locked car, sometimes no one is, and yet even here, there are signs of endurance. A man leaves his window cracked for the person parked beside him, just in case they need to call out. A woman shares bottled water with someone she met yesterday. If someone you love slipped into a life like this, how far would you go to bring them back? Like this video and share it. These voices deserve to reach more people. Because the crisis isn't just physical, it's human. And the real weight of it becomes clear when you begin to hear their stories. A former mechanic folds his work uniform carefully every night before sleeping in his car. He still irons it when he can, still shows up on time. His coworkers don't know. A woman who once handled office paperwork now lives in a motel room with her daughter. The TV stays on all night, not for entertainment, but to drown out the fear of silence. Another man keeps a photograph taped to his dashboard, a family gathering from years ago. He doesn't talk about it, but he looks at it every morning. These are not strangers. They were neighbors, workers, parents, people with routines, birthdays, plans. According to a 2025 report from the Urban Institute, nearly 40% of people experiencing homelessness in the U.S. are employed in some capacity, working, earning, still unable to secure housing. But behind every number is a face, a history, a name the data never bothered to record. The line between stability and the street is thinner than most people imagine. A lost job, a broken relationship, a medical bill, too high to pay. Sometimes that's all it takes. And yet, humanity persists here in quiet ways. Someone saves half their meal for a stranger. Someone remembers another person's name and says it out loud. Recognition becomes dignity. What would you hold on to if everything else was taken from you? If you believe these stories deserve to be told, don't leave without subscribing, because these stories didn't begin here. They began long before the car, long before the motel, and understanding why means looking at the systems that quietly failed them. Rent doesn't fall slowly, it climbs. In many major US cities, median rent has increased by over 30% since 2020, according to Zillow's 2025 housing data. Wages have not followed at the same pace, but behind every number is a face, a history, a name the data never bothered to record. Eviction filings surged again after pandemic protections ended, courtrooms filled, notices posted on doors, families given days to leave, affordable housing waitlists stretched for months, sometimes years. By the time a spot opens, people have already been displaced, scattered, erased. It's not always about bad choices. Sometimes it's about systems that give no second chances. Mental health struggles often follow displacement, not precede it. Anxiety, depression, the constant stress of instability. Living without a fixed place to rest changes the brain. It reshapes how safety feels or disappears entirely. The line between stability and the street is thinner than most people imagine. A lost job, a broken relationship, a medical bill too high to pay. Sometimes that's all it takes, and still people adapt. They create routines out of chaos. They find ways to survive in spaces never meant for living, to rebuild systems that catch people or ones that let them fall. Share your thoughts below. I want to hear your perspective. Because the consequences of these failures are not abstract. They live in the body, and they show themselves in ways that are impossible to ignore. Sleep deprivation changes everything. 3 nights without proper rest begins to blur reality. 5 nights, and the body starts to shut down in quiet ways. Memory slips. Emotions flatten. The world feels distant. In cars and motels, sleep is never complete. There's always noise, always movement, always the awareness that safety is temporary. According to the CDC 2024 Homelessness Health Report, individuals without stable housing are significantly more likely to suffer from chronic illness, untreated infections, and mental health crises. But behind every number is a face, a history, a name the data never bothered to record. Infections spread easily in confined conditions. Skin breaks down. Minor wounds become serious. Without refrigeration, medications lose effectiveness. Without refrigeration, medications lose effectiveness. Loneliness becomes physical. You can feel it in the chest, in the silence after midnight. And yet, there are moments. A shared conversation at a gas station, someone offering coffee. Someone saying, "I see you." Sometimes that's enough to keep someone going another day. When was the last time you felt truly seen, and what would it mean to lose that? Drop a comment below. What part of this story hit you hardest? Because the response to this crisis exists. Funding has been allocated, programs announced, but what happens when those efforts don't reach the people who need them most? Across the country, billions have been pledged. The American Rescue Plan Act allocated over $46 billion toward housing stability and homelessness prevention. Cities launched rapid rehousing programs, emergency vouchers, shelter expansions. But on the ground, outreach workers describe something different. Waitlists, delays, systems overwhelmed. But behind every number is a face, a history, a name the data never bothered to record. Shelters fill quickly. Many have rules that don't accommodate working individuals or families with complex needs. Storage units in cars become the fallback. Treatment beds for substance use and mental health remain limited. Weeks, months, sometimes longer. Officials talk about progress, but progress is a word that feels distant here, not because nothing is being done, but because what is being done isn't enough. Still, people show up. Caseworkers, volunteers, nurses. They keep returning, day after day. What does accountability look like when the problem keeps growing? How do you feel when you see governments spend millions but change so little on the ground? Tell me below. Because despite everything, hope still exists. Not in policies, but in people. In the middle of all this, there are those who refuse to look away. Organizations like National Alliance to End Homelessness, Volunteers of America, and countless local outreach groups walk these streets daily. They bring food, medical care, conversation. Sometimes the most important thing they offer is consistency, a familiar face, a promise kept. Recovery stories exist too, quiet ones. People who move from cars into apartments, from motels into stability. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, thread by thread, an ember that refuses to die. But behind every number is a face, a history, a name the data never bothered to record. And the truth is, change doesn't come from distance. It comes from proximity, from choosing to see, from choosing to care. If this reality appeared outside your door tomorrow, would you look away or step closer? If these stories move you, be part of the change. Subscribe to US Homeless Stories. Because this journey doesn't end here. It ends with something quieter, something personal. When I left that parking lot, the engine sounded louder than usual. The silence inside the car felt heavier. I kept thinking about the people still there, still waiting, still breathing. The difference between me and them isn't strength. It isn't intelligence. It's circumstance, a series of moments that went differently. That's all. But behind every number is a face, a history, a name the data never bothered to record. And those names stay with you, long after the camera turns off, long after the street disappears in the rearview mirror. If this story meant something to you, don't let it end here. Like this video so more people can see it. Share it with someone who needs to understand. Leave a comment, not just for me, but for the voices in this film. And subscribe to US Homeless Stories, because these stories deserve to be seen, heard, and remembered. Every action you take helps keep these stories alive. And before we go, a quiet prayer. For those sleeping in cars tonight, may they find warmth. For those in motels counting days, may they find stability. For those still searching, may they be seen. What will your first step toward hope be?